Testing. Can you hear me? Oh man, I'm pretty quiet, aren't I? Yeah, 10-second delay to prevent people from ghosting me. Okay. Is it audible and is the music too much or is it like not even recognizable? Yeah, 10-second delay to prevent people from ghosting me. Okay. Is it audible and is the music too much or is it like not even recognizable? Can't hear the music. Oh, okay. Working on it. Okay, now you might be able to hear the music when it comes back on. Okay, music is playing. It's just some light chill step stuff. Oh, you can see it. Blah blah, testing, talking over the music, making sure you can understand me, but the music is still audible. Blah blah blah. So, how was your day? You got a truck. I guess it was a pretty good day. I'm sick, but I got paid to not work, so it was actually kind of a good day. If I have to cough, I'll try and mute my mic as well as I can. Personal audio is fine. Cool. Okay. Okay, so I'll keep this over here, and let's get started. You should be able to see shortly. adjusting my settings so I can see the comments. Now, the question is, what are you going to name your truck? Gotta name your truckie. Okay. Oh yeah, I am second monitoring. Second monitoring. Um, I have a whole bunch of shit on my second monitor. I have a script for what I'm gonna do. I have the dashboard for my stream. I have OBS. I have my object window for Creation Kit, and I have the comments and the cell view for Creation Kit. It's a whole lot of shit. Um, let's see. I was just poking around a cell. All right, so let's get started. Let's go to the cell that I started. It's in the interiors world space, and it's called Fortress Dalkine. Okay, I'm loading it. What's hilarious? Guess how rock solid this engine is. I don't know. Maybe this is normal, but upon loading just a generic cell in the overworld, with no changes made on my part, got over 400 errors in the warnings list. It's awesome. None of them were like breaking things. It was just, hey, you have a light source that isn't set up perfectly. It's fine, but warning. Anyway, just funny. So this is what I made so far. I'm gonna go ahead and delete it and remake it and explain what I'm doing. So first off, I will show you my concept. I drew a thing today. If there's anyone watching, I think, is there someone else? There might be one other person watching this. Okay. Besides, I want to keep this anyway as a personal reference for my process. So, if you're doing level design, it helps to make some concept art. You don't have to be a good artist. I'm certainly not a good artist, but it does help to map out what's in your head onto paper, even if it doesn't look exactly like what's in your head. At least it helps you keep on track with your vision and helps you put together the more major parts of your design. So here's what I have. Let me zoom in, make sure you can see it. So here's this cylindrical chamber. That's going to be the first chamber of this dungeon. It's a cave set. There's going to be a quest object or an important object down at the bottom. You start out at the top, though, and you look down, and you take these winding platforms down to the bottom. Or you can just jump, and there are talents and spells you can use to break your fall, but you have to obviously have a default way down. Anyway, it's cylindrical for a specific reason that I'll get to later, but we'll get started making the shell. Now, making a level shell or gray box or whatever, there's different names for it. You want to do this because it helps you with an iterative approach to your design, because as you go along in this process of making a dungeon or making a whole game, things are going to change. Like, the first dungeons I made in Skyrim, there was a noticeable difference in quality from the beginning of the dungeon to the end of the dungeon, so you want to kind of avoid that. Okay, I'm just looking at the comments. So it is probably just me, but I'll keep talking like I have viewers anyway. Why not? So, let me get, there might be some talking in this song, which is throwing me off, so let me skip forward 10 minutes. Okay, that's better. Alright, so let's go to the object window and pull out some cave pieces. We want to start with a big shell. And you want to, going back to what I was saying before about gray boxes and stuff, you want to build just a big outline of what you're doing so that you can replace it as you go with the more final product. So let's go to shaft, or building a shaft. There's a whole category for dungeons, caves, green caves, and all the different parts of the green caves, and one of those is shafts. There are other shafts like it in Skyrim, so making this isn't too big a deal. Once you've seen one, you kind of know how it's made. It's made up of just rings, cylindrical rings and walls. Different pieces you can sub out like Legos, just like the other parts of the kit. So we'll start with a top. So let's go down the list. And you can't see it. This is what I'm looking at here, but since this doesn't really fit on the screen, without making the preview box drastically smaller, I'm just going to keep it over here. Let's start with the top. Boop, there it is. So it's a closed top. Eventually we're going to open it up and make a light source. Like sunlight is shining down through the cave because you have to have an intelligent source for your lights. But we'll get to that later. This is where we're starting. You always have to just have a point where you're going to begin building and then build outward. So do the top, and then we will do a straight ring of shaft. And, oh, I don't have snapping on, so let's turn both snapping on. Adjust this a little bit. Okay. I haven't made anything in Creation Kit in like a year and a half, so getting used to this is kind of weird, but... Alright, so we've got the top of the shaft here. And then we're going to have a door. Now, when you build a door in any of these kits, it's going to come out as a wall, not necessarily a whole piece. Which means you have to manually construct the rest of the walls and piece. But that's too small. We want a big door. So we have to understand the nomenclature. Cave, green, shaft, door, big. Here it is. And just painstakingly navigating this 3D space. Okay, so we got our first door. And there shouldn't be any seams when you line it up, which is why we have the snapping on. But this is where the entrance is going to be. We're going to pick out a nice cave entrance, add some sunlight through it, and it'll be where you start off in this floor of the dungeon. So, but first, before we do that, let's build out the rest of the shaft. So we have to build the rest of the walls. So we're going to scroll down to walls here. Now, if you look at the number, cave, shaft, door, 1. The 1, it's not necessarily a permutation of the door, it's more of like what side the wall is on. So you can keep that in mind and build out the rest of the pieces without having to do the guesswork of figuring out which wall you're working on. Because these things all snap together, they're all slightly different, but they will leave seams if you don't put them in the correct order. So you want to pay attention to the numbers of the things that you're putting down. They correlate to different sides. And it's weird getting the camera. There we go. Okay, now we need wall 4. There we go. Cool, no seams. So, oops. We're going to go ahead and find an entrance now. So we're going to go to large room, subset here. When I'm staring at this for extended periods of time, I will bring it over so you can get a look at how I'm searching for things. So we're looking at large room. Then we're going to find entrance. There should be entrance, which is different from a door. It's large wall. Large hall. Here we go. Entrance. So let's bring that out. Boom. Nice big old fat rocky entrance. You don't ever see it from this angle. It's always from this, and it connects to the cave piece. There are other similar types of doorways that exist for different caves and ruins and stuff that serve as not a door, but a loading point. So it doesn't function just like this. This is just base geometry, but you'll eventually put in a load sphere, where as you get closer to it, it'll then bring up the loading screen and load where you set the teleport point to. Oh my god, Lauren's watching. Hi, Lauren. 3 streamers. I've increased my stream count, my viewer count by 50%. Fuck yeah. Okay. Let's build out the rest of this shaft. Let's select this straight piece. Bring it down. I missed your comment about being too small due to drop down. You'll have to fill me in on what you meant, and I'll remember to zoom in further or be more visible next time, or maybe explain it better. Yeah, yes, streamer is bad at chat because I have all this shit covering up my the comment stream. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Stick it over here. Ah, fuck, it's so tiny. Okay. There's a lot of that's what she said so far in this shaft, tip of the whatever. All right, so we're gonna build more shaft. Examine the whole thing. So that's the entrance. We're gonna go down one more. Okay, that's probably sufficient. Because this shaft, it's actually a little bit bigger than you might realize. So to test the size of things, and I always recommend doing this when working with a kit that you're not sure of the pieces, you're just kind of going along. Find an NPC like good old Alvor. Let's find Alvor here. Hang on. Whoops. Looking for my object window. There you are. Okay. Search for Alvor. He's the first blacksmith that you find in the game. Plop him down there. There he is. Okay, so now we have a nice idea of how big this cave is. It's decently big. So let's get rid of him now that we have a better idea of where we're going for. And yeah, this is a good length to spiral down and not get too bored getting there. So now we have to cap this off with the bottom. Keep closing my object window. Need to keep that open. Anyway. Okay, let's go back to green cave, shaft, and there should be a bottom piece. Now, obviously, it's not going to look like this. We need to have a proper floor and an exit. So we have to take away this shaft piece right here and replace it with walls. So we can copy paste what we got here, but we also want to have it going in a different direction, just variety. So let's select all the pieces of the wall, this like level of the shaft here, and then we're just gonna paste that bitch right here. Oh, I didn't get it all. Wait, no, I did. It's just not visible because camera. And then we gotta just shimmy it into place, move it up. There we go. But like I said, we want to have the entrance on the other side. So let's Control F to bring up a replace function, which is super handy. And we're going to replace door 1 with wall 1. So it should be in this drop-down list somewhere. Wall 1. Boom. Very important to have the numbers right, or else we'll just show you what it looks like. It won't snap correctly. See? Faces a different direction. And if you were to try and rotate it into place, the seams would show. Oh, I just messed up. I done fucked up. I accidentally unclicked same base object only, and okay. It loads every object in the game. That was scary. Okay. So we fixed that. Now let's go to the opposite wall, select that, replace it with the door 2. Because this is, oh, I'm sorry. This is wall 3, so we need door 3. There we go. The Alvor scale, like Bethesda trademarked the sandwich rule. I wonder if I mentioned that during the interview, if they're just like, welcome aboard! I don't think so. Nice to pretend, though. Okay, so we have basic structure of the shaft. If it seems a little bigger than we need to, there's a rule with building caves in Skyrim, and probably a lot of other games too, come to think of it. With a modular kit like this, where you're basically just plopping pieces down and filling in the holes, you need to go a little bit bigger so you have room for the details. Also, this is like super like default looking. It's square. It doesn't look that natural. So you fill it in with pillars and cave pieces and platforms and all that junk to make it look like a natural flowing organic cave. That's what they did with all the caves in Skyrim. But it's important to get the shell done first. So we need our proper floor. So let's go. And floors are weird, man. They don't... Okay, there's no like big piece of floor. At least not that I've found. It's... You use either a wall on its side, like a big wall on its side, or lots of little floors mashed together. So I'm just going to do a lot of little floors mashed together so I don't run into resolution issues. Because if you take one of those big-ass walls that are meant for a huge cavern that spans like a mile wide, if you look at it up close or if your character is running on it, the texture resolution is horrible because you're not meant to be that close to it. So anyway, I'm going to use... I'm going to go to large room, and we're going to find ourselves a floor. Now, this may take some trial and error because certain parts of floor come with a ceiling attached right above it like that. So let's Control F and replace it with mid 1C, which C usually means that there's some form of ceiling alteration. Sometimes it means that there isn't one. So in this case, they added like a little sun shaft to it. So this is not what we need. Let's delete it and we'll search again. Yeah, I agree. Drawing is the same. There is some transfer with that skill set. I wish I were better at drawing. There was a, as I find this floor, there was a Reddit post not too long ago about this kid, this like relatively older kid, like past school, and he started off with like these horrible, shitty stick figure drawings, but he was like, I feel like getting better at drawing. So he chronicled his like 6 or 7 year practice regimen, and by the end of it, he was like drawing for Disney and shit, and like really big AAA games, and he just like got there through practice despite not learning a damn thing in school. So I thought that was really cool. Just you can pick up a hobby later in life than you think and get amazing at it. Which is why I'm not sweating bullets thinking about my future while doing this at the ripe age of almost 29. Actually, I am sweating bullets, but it's because I have a slight fever. Anyway. Large room, hall. I swear to God, there is a floor here somewhere. There is an object preview window. Yeah, you've come tremendously far in a year. You draw better than I would have ever dreamed in a year. Keep closing this for some dumb reason. There is a preview of sorts. Oh, wow, I'm dumb. I'm just not figuring this out. Thank you. Alright, so now let's look at all of the floors. Epic. No, there's no floor in Epic. Let's look at large hall. Getting back on track here after that little tangent. It's okay. That's what streams are for, right? Large room. Oh, this looks promising. Looks promising. Let's scroll up. No ceiling, it appears. Okay, so we found our floor. Nope, there is a ceiling. It's just higher up. See, I built this. I built this. I just don't remember which piece I used for the floor. Sweet, I'm down with that. Here we go. Cave floor. Okay. Now let's copy paste this bitch. Get a nice little grid going. Gotta make sure they're all at the same height, same facing. Only if you're building on different pieces, you want to make sure they're the same facing. If you're copy pasting, they automatically are. So. Sometimes if you copy something and paste it onto another object, the elevation will change, so you just have to adjust it. Okay. Now, instead of the pain in the ass process of manually selecting all 9 pieces, we're just going to go over to our cell view, find all the floors, because there's only these, select them, and then reselect this window, and now we can move it as we please. But it's too snappy, so let's turn off the snap, and then we can move it around. Rotate the camera, make sure it intersects all the walls, there's no seams. But we also want to lower it, because I want a ramp leading up to this. I don't want a flat floor. So now that I've adjusted, moving around, make sure it's intersecting again, trial and error, and that looks good. Okay, so now we need to build the platforms. So, the gameplay pattern I want to start with is the player walks in, gets to the balcony right here, looks down, he sees the way forward, either the object down at the bottom, the shrine we're going to put there, or the door. He sees his endpoint, the goal. It's going to be lit up, but again, later, haven't gotten to lighting yet. And then you're going to have a path downward. Obviously, the hazard here is falling. It's not that big a deal. It's, I guess, the first trial that we're going to have in this Cave of Trials. So let's get to making some platforms. We're going to use balconies, which are meant for platforms on the side of rocks and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of them right here. So we're going to bring out the shelf. And like the floor, we're going to turn off snapping so we can move it. We're going to turn off rotational snapping so we can move it slightly in these directions too. And the fun thing about cave pieces is that you just kind of put shit places until it looks good. So got this weird clipping thing coming in here, but it's not that big a deal because it fixes this seam right here in the floor. And the transition of the texture right here, this sharp piece, you can cover that with dirt mounds. So again, that's just details that we're working on later in the design cycle. So, but we also need to get down there, so we need to rotate this. So it's going down. It needs to be at a sharp enough angle so that you can get down there without cluttering this thing up with too many of these balconies, but not so sharp that your character can't walk back up. So we're gonna move this like here. See, we got this piece sticking out right here. It looks pretty ugly. If your character can walk past it, then we're fine. So again, we can cover that with a dirt mound and start off with this being our first downward piece. Okay, let's bring out some smaller shelves. So let's go to, we're an epic balcony, so let's move to regular balcony. Bring out some shelves. Rotate those bitches. And place them around the outer edge. So it's going to spiral down like this. To add some variety, we can add one of these bigger shells right here, but just the platform at the end part of it. We can rotate it so it looks less horrible. And then we have a flat platform piece that's just different from the rest to add variety. Hang on, our song is talking to me again. Please stop. My music is causing an odd popping sound every 3 seconds. Huh. Perhaps I should just switch to no music. Has it been going on the entire time? Going on for 5 minutes. Interesting. Let me try a different video, maybe? Okay, we'll see if this helps at all. If that doesn't, then I'll delete that source and try making it again. This is an ugly seam right here. I'll eventually want to cover that up with something. Oh, actually it's not a seam, it's just an ugly part of the piece. Oops. Okay, I remade the source. We'll see if this helps. Now, this is too close to the wall. We don't want to bring it out any further because we want the rest of this to be... I guess we can bring it a little bit further. Okay. Now, we can cross over here. Because we don't want it to be perfectly spiral. Let's add some variety. So let's add... part that crosses over and down. Let's use a bigger shelf for that. We can even size it down a little bit so it fits a little bit better. And this jump right here doesn't work, so we're going to need to try the thinner end of it, rotate it. You want to be careful with resizing these pieces to make them artificially bigger or smaller than they're supposed to be by too much, because the change in texture resolution will look pretty weird. So like, if you make it super small, you put it up against this right here, whoops, and you can notice the difference in texture quality. But sometimes it's like a necessary evil if you have to use a different size piece and resize it because you absolutely need to have that piece in that size. Okay, so we got this right here. I still don't quite like how this looks. So let's take this here, rotate it, whoops, rotate it this way. So it's almost like, there we go, a little bit more straight. And then we're going to take a pillar. The fun thing about pillars is they put a lot of work into making these pillars usable for lots of different things. They're not like a facade. They have their whole geometry made. So they have the top and, okay, no, they don't have the bottom. So they're almost perfectly made. But anyway, these do work well sizing them because the height makes them grow tremendously without losing too much quality. It's weird to explain, but put side by side. Okay, take everything back. It does look like shit. Let's try a taller pillar. Let's go down to pillar 6. So you make that much bigger, but the platform's not as big as we need. So what I think we need to do is have the crossover happen a little bit further down the shaft. That way the pillar reaches up to it. So we're just going to keep going around. Try and make it look as natural as possible, with as few seams as possible. Oh, we need to move down though. And like I said, ultimately the seams can be covered with dirt piles, so as long as you transition them like this and they're roughly the same level so that the player can walk over it, then you're fine. You can add variety in the floor texture later. Okay, so we've crossed over enough that we can make a pillar that stretches up here, makes a little platform. So let's add a pillar again. This one's good. Enhance it a little bit. Enhance it. Enlarge it. There we go. Just a different piece. It's getting pretty close to the door. Okay, we'll just build out the rest of it, and if the door position needs to change, we can change that by swapping it out. No big deal. There we go. Now we're going to cross over. Thing is, it's a little bit too close to the floor, and we want the shrine object to be right in the middle, and it's a tall object, so it's going to get clipped. So we're going to have to go across the door right here. It's pretty ugly, but, you know, that's what dirt mounds are for. Okay, so you're going to get some occasional pooping when using OBS. Got it. Okay, now the platforms that are closer to the ground, we can afford to add more pillars because they will reach it. And it just looks nicer, it looks a lot more natural. But we can't do it for every single platform just because they don't all reach up that high. But this is kind of a big under part here, so we want to have something that's bigger like this pillar. So let's switch it out for... I've noticed in the nomenclature of the objects, the bigger items tend to be the different objects tend to be like they're bigger the lower the number it is. So let's go with like 1 or 2. Here we go. This is good right here. Let's move that. You want to examine and make sure the player can't get caught behind the pillar on the wall or something like that. So that looks good enough that we might be able to delete this other shelf here. So let's take that out and see how it looks. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So we'll delete it. Move this in, just adjust it a little bit. And yeah, that actually looks much better than having a tiny shelf clipping in both sides. Less work in covering up the seams. Okay, so now it's time to get down to the ground. Get this little ramp, ramp here. Need to rotate this on this axis. There we go. Player can get caught right here though, so you want to be careful. Resize this a little bit. And we'll add another pillar platform right here. Rotate it. Okay. Alright, now, there is a ramp piece that you can use for the bottoms and tops of these shelf contraptions. So let's find balcony and ramp. Specifically meant because they have these flat areas at the top, make it look a little easier. There we go. Just, it forms better in with it. Okay, that looks good. And we don't need to move the door. The door's in a fine location. I was afraid that this would be too close to it, or the ramp down would be too close to it, but we ended up in a good spot. So, having used this piece, I think we could replace some of these shelves with ramps, just for variety, because they all look like straight things cutting across the... Yeah. I think some improvement can be made if we replace some of them with ramps and then adjusted. Of course, now because I moved those pieces all over the place, it's weird getting it back to its original orientation. Once you replace something, I don't believe you can undo it, so pretty much have to finagle it back to something that looks good. This is too much of a jump. Mouse sensitivity is weird, yo. Okay, that looks good. Lower this. Okay. Now we can potentially put a pillar on top of a pillar. So let's take one of these big, tall pillars. Stick it on here just for up like against the wall. We can resize it. Let's make sure it doesn't look too ugly. Actually, it looks too pretty compared to the rest of the wall, so we have some room to grow. Then we can slightly rotate it so it looks like it's okay. There we go. Just looks like more natural with holding up the platform right here. Okay, so as ugly as this is, it's our starting point, and it is gameplay complete. The player, you could play it right now, and gameplay-wise, it's pretty much finished. It's not going to change much. It's just what the player feels is going to change. So you see your object down at the bottom. You see the way you're going to get down there. You can either jump to your death, or you can waltz across these platforms. Okay, so now we've got our shell here. Let's see what's next on the list. Okay, let's get a little bit into lighting. Just because looking at all this is kind of an eyesore. I have it on default lighting. This is what true lighting looks like. Basically what the pieces look like with no lighting whatsoever. And it's a huge eyesore. It's really bright. And this is with the default world lighting. So we're going to add some actual lights just as a temporary thing to make it look less horrible to our eyeballs. So let's go and find some lights. Let's use Azura Blue. Turn markers on so we can see this thing. Up the brightness, up the radius by a lot. Down the brightness. There we go. Let's move this blue up here. Okay, so it's a nice blue light source. Let's bring another one down here. Let's make it a warm color, because warm colors draw the eye. Let's find a... We won't use a shadow light because this structure is so big that you won't be able to see it very well. Because the shadow lights dissipate after a certain distance away from it. Let's find Bleak Falls, Torchlight, no shadow. Let's see if this is a warm light. It is not. It's a yellow light. Well, yellow is technically a warm color. But let's find... I'm just going to keep this over here, keep moving it out of the way. Candlelight. There you go, this is more orange. Actually, no, it's about the same. Okay, let's bring out the big guns. Bring out the Dwemer lights. Love me some Dwemer lights. Dwarven, Omni, Warm. Shad. Not Shad. We don't want Shadow. Okay. Nice orange light. Cool. This is good enough. Turn off the markers. Okay, so let's open up the ceiling here, because lights need a source or else they don't make any sense. So this also needs to be a brightly lit chamber, because we don't want to depress the player too much upon first immediately entering this structure. So fortunately, this particular piece has a topless version. Woo! And then it's also got this top right here in case like the player somehow gets up here and can see a little bit out. I thought it was funny. Anyway, so one of the things you can do if you're not sure how to proceed once making a piece is you go to the use info. So you find this piece in the object window. Let's go to shafts, then top. Top C. C means ceiling modification. Right click down at the bottom, use info, and it gives you all the areas in Skyrim that also have this piece. So there's a wilderness section that has it. Movarth's Lair has one. Helgen Keep has one. Reachwater Rock. Let's look at Reachwater Rock. That was a cool dungeon. Let's just load this. You got my 479 errors. Alright, so here is that piece. So in order to make this beautiful looking sunbeam come through, it's a bunch of ambient beam dust particles. And I think they have light emittance. So there's a light source up here, and it makes these beams take on the color of the light. So if we temporarily disable all these light sources, the light goes away. But there is still a light source right here. Boop. And then we have basically what we have in our structure right now. Just a base piece, no lights, nothing. You put a non-shadow casting... Oh wait, no, this... No, I don't think this is a shadow casting light. No, it's not. It's a sunlight type of light. I think... I'm not sure how the sunlight lights differ from the other lights, but maybe I'll find that out as I go along. But we rebuild the scene. And all these ambient beam dust things, they have the emittance of this light source. Actually, it's a different light source, but it's one that looks similar. So it picks up the light and carries it down. So we could just select all these light things and copy paste, but how do you learn from doing that? We need to look at the pieces, and we got FX ambient beam, slow fog, and then we got a light source up there. Okay, so let's go back to Dalkine. Let's copy our light source right here. Add one up toward the top, right here. And then we're going to go hunting in the object window, which keeps moving over here. FX amb. Okay, so let's start pulling them in, see what they look like. Some of them are really, really thin. Some of them are thick. Like this is a thin shaft of light. Like if there's a hole in a small hallway kit piece, you could use that. This is nice and thick. So let's bring one of these up. Thank God for these gray lines. Trying to move a wispy thing in 3D space is a nightmare. So we got that. We're going to add a few more. Okay, so... trial and error, just see what these look like. Just make sure they're centered. Oh, I've been making a mistake. I have not been setting up their emittance correctly. So let's do that. Exterior light. FX light region cave blue pale. Let's try that. Oops. Hate when windows pop up behind my thing. Really, part of the reason you have emittance set up, despite these things looking okay on their own, is any objects that pass through them will also be lit up correctly. This is like a sunlight. It's not picking up the blue though. Let's disable the blue light and see if that changes. Okay, it does. Alright, so we'll continue. But you can still see the very top here. So if we turn on the actual sky lighting, you can see through the top. We want it to be so bright that you can't see out the top. So let's go back and see how they did that. Okay, so they got some trees and junk out here. So they built more landscape around the top because they're counting on the fact that you can see out of it too easily. and they have all these lights here. So let's select these lights. We're going to copy them, slap them in our cell right here. There we go. It's nice and bright. Oh, I missed this cross-shaped one is a bright glowy thing. That's basically specifically what it is. It's meant to take up space and just look glowy so you can't see past it very well. So let's move that up forward. That way it looks like a clear sky when you take away the markers and deselect. It just looks like a clear, bright sky with sunlight shining down through it. But it's also pardon me while I die. It's also shining at an angle, so we need to fix that. Let's turn the markers back on. Straighten them out, and then we're going to hide it so I can select the rest of them. Doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to go down. Okay, that's good. Now we'll rebuild the scene. That looks better. Now if we can, if we want to, like put trees and shit up here just to make it more convincing looking, but that is a detail that's added later in the process. We're just getting the lighting prototype out of the way so we can kind of get a feel for how the player is gonna just their emotions as they go through this place. You look through, you walk in, you look up, and you see this shaft, and the light source is believable. It's pretty well lit, and you're not questioning why it's pretty well lit. My only concern is that maybe the top is too far up, because if you look at the elevation, this entrance is like way below this top here. So if you're thinking about where the player enters, like maybe over here or so, there must be like a big ass mountain coming up here for this top to be below where you enter. So it's something to keep in mind. I may have to lower this if the exterior, when I get to it, ends up being pretty flat. It may even help to like add this to the exterior section. Make it so that there's collision so you can't drop down in there. But it would help with the continuity of the whole thing. Oh, what if it's nighttime? That's a great question. I don't know how they do it if it's nighttime. I've never questioned it, which means they must do it in the game so that if it's nighttime, there's less light or there's a nighttime skybox. Because I've never looked up and been like, man, that's super bright for being, you know, a moonlight or something like that. Although, to be honest, Skyrim is pretty bright at night. That's very interesting. I'll have to come back to that. I'll have to do some research and see if there is a real difference. I'll just go to a cave, find something like this, look up, save, wait 12 hours, and look up again and see if there's a huge difference. Maybe they do something different with the skybox, or maybe it has to do with the lights that they chose. Very good question. Okay, so let's see what else there is to do. Oh, I specifically chose two different colors here because you want to have a gradient. If these were the same color, it ends up being just as much of an eyesore as if there was no color at all. It's a change of emotion too, because you come here and the blue color is kind of welcoming. You look down and you see this well-lit, bright warm color, and it kind of beckons you forward. Part of the theme of this floor, this Cave of Trials, is beckoning the player forward. There's always going to be something that's just out of reach. If you can see it, you see perils leading up to it, and you want to go get it. So there's going to be this shrine. There is a shrine to Periite that I'm going to put down here. I can't for the life of me find the model for it, because in the loading screen you see the big old dragon statue or whatever. I will find it, and I will put it down there. And there will also be a pedestal, which our diamond doesn't. I can find those. But yeah. So, I've reached the point that I did before starting the stream, because I wanted to just warm up in the creation kit and get used to working in 3D space again. So I'm not fumbling around for like literally an hour. How do I rotate this? But I'm at the point where I deleted all my shit. So this is all new from here on out. So let's look at the concept again. Next, it's a generic hallway. It's going to be a Nordic hallway that's like laced with cave elements. So like a super shitty Nordic hallway. Almost as if a tectonic shift kind of unearthed it somehow. And they're going to be skeevers that are spawning just out of eyesight of you, and then you stumble across them and they path away from you. As if, again, beckoning you deeper in the cave. Like, what do the skeevers want? But it's also a symbolic thing because Periite takes the form of skeevers occasionally. So, we need to make a transition between this and a Nordic. So there are specific transition pieces that they built to go between kits. They're just hidden deep in this menu. But failing that, we can also do it ourselves. We can just use a lot of rocks and pieces of architecture to seal the seams along the outside edge. But for now, let's start with a large to small hallway piece. Need to turn snapping back on. If I do run out of options, I can simply select this piece and do use info and see where the devs used it. Kind of get my brain jogged. Okay, here's a big hallway piece. But we do want to transition to a smaller. Okay, that's interesting. So these pieces marked 128, they're meant to be almost curves. So you can shift over half a kit piece with, if you don't want to like, if you don't want to, if you still want to snap, but you don't want to move it around, you know, pixel by pixel like that. It's interesting. Because let's face it, when I'm playing other people's mods, I see a common problem where people will make hallways out of perfectly straight halls that go just straight, and they look totally unnatural. And then there will be hallways that go in perfect 90-degree angles, which aren't much better. You think they would be, but they're actually not, especially in a cave. So having these curved pieces, these 128 pieces, helps because it just kind of breaks up this straight flow. It helps to make your eye move around instead of just staring in one direction, turning 90 degrees, keep staring forward. Okay, here we go. This is a big piece leading to a small door. It is kind of gratifying when you finally find the exact Lego piece that you need. Okay, here's a big entrance. Doesn't line up properly, but it's not what we need anyway. We want to go to a smaller hallway. Let's see. Let's see why specifically we need to do this. Oh, right. We just want it to be narrow so we can see the skeevers going around the corners and stuff like that. Short sight lines, and then we get to a small chamber with our first dead adventurer. And there's going to be another skeever encounter there next to a book page. So we want small hallway, because put Alvor right here, it's pretty big. Even if one single piece is a bit too large a sight line, we want those rats to be close when they spawn, and then they run out of eyesight. Here we go. Keep forgetting about this. Let's preview. There we go, finally. Alright, that helped. Just wish I'd remembered to use that about 10 minutes ago. Anyway. It doesn't make it easier to see. It didn't make it like a ping noise or anything, but let's see. I'm bad at comments. As long as the color of the light source makes sense. Should be torches for the orange color. Example. Yeah, I agree. The orange, it's... especially if you go with the slightly flickering kind, it has to be torches or fire or something like that. Maybe a brazier on either side of this thing. Why is what all beaten up? It is chat. It is chat, but on the live dashboard, it says it's comments. It actually says it's both comments and messages. Make up your mind, YouTube. Anyway. Adjusting things. Okay, that's better. Oh, yes. Okay, so the origin of this Nordic hallway, the origin of this trial, I guess it could be two different things. It could be like it was unearthed and Perrite is now using it as a trial ground, or it could be in pretty good condition and Perrite's followers set it up to be that way. It would probably make more sense if it was more put together, less horrible looking. So, in order to make this believable, this entrance right here, it should have more Nordic elements to help phase in the transition. In this cave right here, this hallway should be primarily a transition device to the Nordic kit. Yeah, I think I like that better than it being too ruined. Because, I mean, we're going to move from a super ruined, or we're going to move from a put-together look to a more ruined and out-of-place look as we go along. Until eventually there's no Nordic left at all. It's just like a weird cave. So yes, I agree. It shouldn't be beat up. So this entrance will need more Nordic elements. Maybe we'll actually have a Nordic floor, Nordic staircase. Boop, let's delete that. Let's just see what this looks like. Let's go to dungeons. Nordic. I see. Okay, this is getting to what we need. But we need a whole staircase. Here we go. Stairs free. They're floating though. There we go. This looks better. But it does clip. So we need to fix that with some dirt mounds. Let's go ahead and fill this one in. I haven't touched the rest of the dirt mounds we'll need, but just for the sake of this looking more complete, I'll go ahead and do it. You'd be surprised at just how much of Skyrim's geometry is covered with seams and out of place bounds and all sorts of like shit you can get under or around. but they expertly covered most of it with other pieces of geometry. That did nothing to cover it. Here's a longer dirt mound. Like that. There we go. That covers it completely, I think. Looks pretty good. The followers of Perryite know it's a new structure. They made it look like it's an old and buried to fool adventurers into thinking that, hey, there's treasure down here that no one has touched. Okay, so we look at the sides here. Because the player can get over here. See if there's any clipping. There's like a tiny little bit. This part's good. Okay, awesome. Sticking out at the top step. Oh, yep, I do see it. Thank you. Boop. There we go. Okay. I'm looking for those elusive transition pieces. Yeah, Draugr ruined. Hallways, generic traps. People get farther and farther. The traps get more and more actually deadly. There's some chamber pieces I want to see. Oh, cool. This actually might work for what we need. So, this lines up roughly, very roughly. We have to fill in right here. This would work if we wanted it to be like this cave was crumbling in and it was like Minecraft. Two caves just kind of happen to intersect. But it's not really what we're going for. We want it to be more deliberate looking than that. So we want a bigger entrance. Hall of Stories. Oh yes, it's one of these. This is more of what we need, actually. But we need the room to open up. So. Cool. Sounds good. Okay. Well, I figure out how this transition's gonna go. I'm gonna take a short break, about 10 minutes. I will be back.